and welcome to Clay to Canopy, the show where I attempt to make just about everything from the ground up. In today's episode, I am going to be going over just some basic tools that you would use for hand building ceramics. If you are new to this channel, please hit that subscribe button. It really does help me out. Hand building ceramics is when you're not using a potter's wheel and you're just using basically your hands to create something. So the set of tools that you would use for that versus the set of tools that you might use for using on a pottery wheel are slightly different. And though some do cross over, today I'm going to just be talking about the basic tools you're going to need to get going with doing some hand building at home or wherever you are. The first set of tools I'm going to go over are going to be some tools that you might find in a basic ceramic kit that you might order online on Amazon, or some universities might be selling to you, or even art supply stores, Michael craft stores. They tend to sell these like starter ceramic kits. Of course, they're going to vary, but the tools that I'm going to go over are ideally the ones you want to make sure you have in your kit. The first thing you're going to need in your toolkit is a pair of these, which is wire cutters. And basically what wire cutters are, is exactly what it sounds like. I'm going to carefully unravel this, and your wire cutters are a thin wire connected to two pieces of wood, and you could make some if you have a piece of thin braided wire. I've seen different tutorials on how to make these, but most toolkits will come with them, and the wire is actually used as a cutting medium. So when you go to cut open your clay, and here I'll demonstrate that. Open up my bag here. You would basically set the clay, depending on how much you wanted, using your wire cutters. Just come in here, rest it against it, and then pull the cutters towards you, and it cuts off a slice. So wire cutters. Now the thing to know about your wire cutter is whenever you are working with any of your tools, you want to make sure that they're clean before they go away, because a lot of things will have wooden handles or wooden components in them. And if you leave the wet clay or any kind of moisture on them when you go to store them, they could potentially mold and your pieces will rot away. So you want to make sure that you give them a good clean. And just to clean the wire cutters, all I did was run my fingers along them to take off any excess clay. And with the wire cutters, you also want to make sure that you wrap them up properly, because if you don't put them away properly and you get any kinks in your wire, it could create little frays that you could end up getting cut with, or it actually could just kink your wire and then it doesn't become a very good performance as far as cutting goes. So to wrap up your wires, you're just going to take your fingers, and I just have it like this, so you can see the back of my hand, and I'm going to just hold with my thumb like this, wrap 2 times around, and then just come in and braid it through just a few times, and you're done. Storage done. Okay. Next thing which you would want to have is something called a fettling knife. And your fettling knife, actually this is like my go-to tool for the majority of the things that I do. It will come in handy when you're blending things out and you're trying to merge 2 seams together. You can use it to cut chunks of clay off, to do trimming. It's a very universal tool to have, and so you want to make sure that your kit has a decent fettling knife. The next thing is a needle tool, and I like to store my needle tool in this sponge here, but basically it sounds exactly what it sounds like. It's a fine tip with a little point. It is very sharp, so that's why I normally store it in my sponge here, because if I have a box full of my tools, I want to make sure that when I'm reaching in to get something, I don't accidentally stab myself. And then this little sponge is really helpful also. Sometimes if I'm building a vessel or something and it's getting a little too dry on the bottom, I might moisten my sponge and throw it in the bottom of it before I go ahead and wrap it up. Also good for trying to soak up any excess moisture if maybe your piece got too wet. The next thing is a really, really helpful tool, and I always say that you could probably get by with nothing but a fettling knife and a serrated rib and maybe a pair of wire cutters. But this serrated rib is really, really handy. It's not absolutely necessary to have one. Sometimes your kit may come with a rounded rib. The serrated rib has little teeth on it, and these little teeth are designed to help you scrape or score when you're joining 2 pieces of clay, and it's a very important step. Some kits come with a metal rib that don't have the serrated edge. If your kit doesn't come with one, you could also use a fork, a household fork, or you could use your needle tool to do the scoring. It just takes a lot longer when you have only one tiny point to sit there and do your scraping with, versus having something that has this edge that allows you to do a decent amount of scraping. A wooden stick. Wooden sticks are great for carving and shaping things. It's also handy to do with blending, and most wooden sticks will have two different profiles, one tip and then something on the back side that could also be used for some burnishing and things like that. So a wooden stick is handy. And then, and again, these couple things that I'm going over are basic things that you might find in a typical toolkit. And then I'm going to go over some ones that are handy to have that probably will be less common in your basic toolkit. The other thing is a loop tool. Now this loop tool is, potters use this on the pottery wheel to do trimming, but it also can be great for carving and hollowing things out. You come in and you can, hold it at an angle, and that's the square one, or if you want to hog out sections. And here's the rounded one. You can rely on it for a lot of your carving and your detail work that you might do on your clay. So this is a loop tool, and this is just a medium-sized loop tool. So a lot of kits will have this medium-sized one, but you can also purchase different size ones here. And this is a larger one, which is very common to be used on the potter's wheel for trimming pots, and it has two different profiles to go ahead and do that. For hand building, it's not as much of a use. You should be constructing in such a way that you're not having that much of a chunk of clay. You're usually constructing thin methods, either through coil or slabs, so you're not really doing that much of a carving type of thing. So as far as hand building goes, this might not be something that you might be really reliant on, but it is available. Now, one that I do find a lot of use out of is the smaller loop tool, and it's a much smaller size. These don't generally come in kits. I've not seen these unless you buy like a really big, like 36 piece whatever ceramic kit. You're probably going to get a bunch of tools that you maybe don't even need, but I've seen them in those kits. So this is a handy tool to have, because if you want to do any finite detail carving, you can see, you can get really pronounced kind of carving going on. So those are loop tools. Some added things. Okay, so let's go over a couple added things that probably won't come in your kit, but maybe you'll want to pick up. Sponge. Some kits do come with tiny little sponges, but working with clay can get very messy, especially this red clay that I'm using, and that's another thing you want to keep in mind. This red clay has an iron oxide in it, and the iron oxide can stain things. So when you're working in clay, you want to definitely be working on a surface that, if it does get stained, it's no big deal, or you want to put something down so that you don't have to worry about staining happening. I like to work on a coated surface. My work surface here is actually a coated surface. It makes it really easy. I don't have to worry about it being raw wood and it staining. I can just wipe up whatever I'm doing when I'm done. So sponge, you definitely need that for cleanup. And then you might want to think about getting an X-Acto knife. This is also very handy if sometimes your fettling knife, though it is technically a knife, it is a blunt knife. You can get them from the 99-cent store, craft knife, and that's also handy to have. Just whenever you are handling sharp objects, obviously take care. Make sure you keep them covered and you don't go throwing them willy-nilly into a bin where you could get cut. Another option, another great tool to have might be this guy here. Is actually a hole cutter. It's basically a drill bit tip on the edge of a tool. So if your kit comes with one of these, great. If you don't have one of these in your kit, I would not go out of your way to order one that's specifically for this unless you're going to be doing a lot of clay. You probably will be easier just grabbing a basic drill bit from the hardware store, but this comes in handy if you forgot to put an air hole in to your piece and you need to quickly carve a hole to get that air flowing in there so your piece doesn't explode in the kiln. And it just has a spiral head just like a drill bit would, and you just kind of use the handle to twist. I have also found these little dental looking tools that are actually made for carving. You can order these online. They also could be used for carving plaster. Did want to point out that ribs come in all different shapes and sizes. You can get wooden ribs, that metal one without the serrated like I talked about, and the rubber one. It's really handy to have a wooden or a rubber rib around when you're trying to do any kind of smoothing and stuff on your pieces. This is also a hole cutter, and I've actually made a couple of these with just a piece of pipe. You just kind of cut it on an angle And this is if you want a larger hole. I've used this a lot for detailed designs. This is an e.l.f. bleeder. It's a makeup tool. It's actually got a rubber tip, and I like using this because it can blend out little areas of clay that you might have as you're carving and things. It can help smooth things out. So, you know, you can find tools just about anywhere, in a kitchen supply store, in your makeup aisle. So I always look for any oddball things that could actually be used and translated to ceramic tools. And I have a full-on collection of just random things that you probably would not think of to use for this, but just about anything could be used as a ceramic tool. So keep your eyes peeled, like, you know, for anything that looked like it might add an interesting texture or could do an interesting job on something other than what it's intended for. Some chopsticks. So, you know, you can just take your wooden chopsticks, and I like to take the back end, especially these ones that square tip end and not the round ones, because then I can go in and take a box cutter and come in and shave and carve my own little intricate little tips here and use them as carving tools. Halloween is coming up, so I always take a look down the Halloween aisle for my pumpkin carving kits, and I usually wait till they go on clearance where I can get them for like 10 cents because nobody wants them at that point. But they have interesting little tools that are in there that you could also use. So this is, again, goes back to that whole just about anything can become a ceramic tool. And I'm sure you can find tons of other different things at the 99-cent store that could be adapted. If you plan on eating that pumpkin and you're switching back and forth and you do use any of your kitchen tools, once you've surrendered them to clay use, do not go back to using them in your kitchen, because though this material may be safe to handle, you don't necessarily want to be ingesting clay. It's not very safe for that purpose. Okay, brushes. So I have here a container of what is called slip, and basically slip is a watered down version of clay, and you can make your own slip. You usually should have a slip that corresponds to whatever clay you're using. And so sometimes as I'm working, what I'll do is I'll take my scrap bits of clay and just keep dumping them in this bucket and just adding water. But to use your slip so that you don't, you keep your hands clean as you're working, you'll want a dedicated brush for the slip. And this is just a chip brush, really cheap 1-inch brush that you get in the hardware section, you get in the paint aisle. And then I use this specifically only for my slip. And then you'll have brushes that you'll want to use dedicated for your glazes, because slip is made out of clay and glaze is made out of glass. It's a different material. These are brushes specifically designed for glazing ceramics. This is a haka brush and this is a sumi brush. They're Japanese brushes that are designed for glazes. You don't have to use these for glazes. You can get some other brushes as long as you have something that is like a natural bristled brush to do your glazing with, then you'll be good to go. Or you can buy these if you want to order them. I saw them pretty cheap on Amazon anyway. So one of the other main things that I do rely on a lot is a right angle square. And this guy I picked up at Home Depot for around $7. And this will just help when you're working, especially in slab, to get straight corners. Especially handy when you're building things that you're trying to keep straight, like boxes or things like that. Now, lastly, you're probably going to need something to roll out your slabs with. If you are working hand building, a lot of hand building is done with either usually coil, the pinching method, or slab building. And slab building requires you to, process your clay and roll out things into a slab form. So in order to do that, you'll need something to roll out your slab, and having a rolling pin is very handy. This one I got for I think like under $5 at a discount store, something like a Marshall's or a Tuesday Morning. This guy here I found at the 99-cent store, the smaller version, but that's okay too. It still works just as fine. And then if all else fails, you can always just use a straight up dowel and roll with that. Some other things to have when you're rolling, I actually made these. This is a cottle board where I just took some square stock, and you can buy these square dowels at Home Depot for all different thicknesses. And I just cut them and just glued them to the end of the square stock so that when I go to use my rolling pin and I roll my slab out, what happens is your rolling pin will meet the sides of the rails here, and then your slab will be an even thickness for whatever size you make. So you can get different thicknesses of these dowels to use and do that. You don't even have to glue them to a board. I just did that because it made it a lot easier, because having it glued to a board, I can make sure that I get this perfect rectangle out every time. And then, you know, you could just have a couple of these loosely and have, you know, 2 of them here and using the rolling pin to go over them that way also. Another really important thing to have is to get yourself some plastic drop cloth. Now the thing with the plastic drop cloth is you want to try and get something around a 1 milliliter. Anything smaller is a little bit too thin, and it's really easy to like poke your finger through, because the point of the drop cloth is to drape over your in progress work and store it so that when you're not working on it, you can kind of keep it from drying out. So the last thing you want is a thin plastic that you could easily poke your finger through, and then it defeats the purpose of keeping the thing wet, you know? Definitely try and stick around a 1. I have gotten some that are like around a 2 milliliter and thicker, and they're just way too much to deal with. And then this is just found in the paint department in the hardware store. You want to make sure it is plastic and not the paper backed kind, because again, the point is to keep the moisture inside of your piece. You do want to avoid trying to use anything like a trash bag, because some trash bags will have those little tiny microfibers that are designed so that your kitchen trash doesn't stink or something, right? Because, you know, so the whole point of the little tiny little microfibers is to allow moisture to come out of the bag. And so if moisture is coming out of your bag, then you got a problem, right? Okay, I think that's pretty much it for your basic rundown on tools that you might use for ceramic use. I'm going to be doing some other videos where I actually show you how to use the roller and to roll out some slabs and things like that. If you have a favorite tool that you like to use that might be out of the ordinary, please go ahead and drop that into the comment section of that video. We all could use the share. So thanks for watching, and I hope to see you soon.